G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War Update for the 22nd of August 2025. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, Power Games, Into the Elsbound and the Erotic Tales from the Empire. Part 1 available now. All my books are available on Amazon. Thank you to all those who support the channel. You can support the channel by buying my books, buying my merch, and of course joining my Patreon. All my links are in the link tree. You can scan now or wait till after the show. The news, of course, is focused primarily on Zelensky, but there really isn't much to tell because we know from yesterday that Zelensky's ruled out accepting a peace deal without security guarantees. He won't sign a deal or meet with Putin until he has these guarantees, and he's approved them. And of course now he's ruled out China as a security guarantor. Actually, they were pretty much begging to be included. I think he's made a huge mistake there. Of course, he always is throwing obstacles in the way of peace. But of course, really he should have included China and India. Because after all, India is hugely responsible for the war. Remember, it's shown that US trade has shown that until the Russian invasion, India was hardly buying any Russian gas oil, and all of a sudden they bought huge amounts, enough to keep the Russian war going, in fact. And in fact, they've increased the amount of gas and oil. Now here we have the key events. Now, here on screen is what a 155mm looks like. Of course, it's huge on the back of a truck. This is the Polish version, I believe, the 2S22. It's based on the French Archer, which of course is based on the M777, which is America's mainstay gun for quite some time. And in fact, it's one of the few heavy artillery pieces. It has the least amount of casualties. Usually the highest amount of casualties are amongst and inflicted by artillery. Artillery is the mainstay of the armed military and has inflicted the most casualties. But because US have been hardly involved in any wars, and of course, you know, the proliferation of the proliferation of artillery, particularly and the high casualties in other conflicts. But of course, the M777 is the least lost piece of equipment compared, which is pretty weird. More helmets have been lost than, of course. But okay, Ukrainian combined drone missile attack has been carried out against Russia. Russia has retaliated. Apparently, there's an unfolding battle situation where in the north there is increased fighting. Russia has escalated. Again, heavy drone and missile strikes, fires across Ukraine. Military aid, of course, has also escalated. So Zelensky can't say that he's interested in peace talks when he's buying more weapons and firing drones at Russia. Russia's accused European leaders of undermining the peace deal. Concerns about security guarantees without any input. Zelensky is saying that Kiev is waiting for a strong reaction, if Putin doesn't sit down with him. And of course, Zelensky's the one who's refused to sit down with Putin. Putin is demanding the entire Donbass renounce ambitions to join NATO, remain neutral and keep Western troops out of the country. Three things that, of course, Hungary and other countries have all offered to help facilitate peace. Ukraine is not interested in peace. Unfortunately, the Western media is pro-Ukrainian and can't see the writing on the wall if it was in bold neon in front of them as they took their morning constitution. Now, if we go around the front, you can see there is fighting on the north. In the north, apparently the increased fighting is in this region over here. Of course, maps all of a sudden decide not to want to load because of bloody ads. Okay, so we have fighting north of Kupiansk. Freaking ads. Changes to the map, slight changes to the map, nothing really consequential. We have fighting in the Lyman area, lots of it. The Russian offensive, of course, this is where they're stepping up. One of the main offensives of the Russian army is the offense towards Lyman, which you can see they're taking on the flanks. There's also the Kosovo, the offensive there, which is stalled in some parts, closer to Kosovo than before in others. They've in standard artillery range to trade blows with the Ukrainian artillery. Not much of this breakthrough has increased, but the Ukrainians have not countered the increase. Increased fighting in this area. As you can see, there's fighting in Pavlovsk. Russians have advanced, not much. There are still, what you would say, on the outskirts of Pavlovsk, but they are in Rodidym and Novovechki. They've taken more territory, but not much. Hardly anything in Pavlovsk. It's more like the satellite towns before Pavlovsk, which is on this side of the road. Technicalities still haven't taken to advanced here, but it's more a holding action. They've struck the territory here. Like I said, this is where Ukraine, one of the areas where Ukraine, come on, map. Freaking heck. Alright. Through here, through this road, through here, this area here, has seen a troop build up to stop the Russians coming up through here to flank the 3rd Zelensky line. Now, Wall Street Journal and the Guardian were all talking about this, the invincibility of the Ukrainian defences. Well, do you see any invincibility? I see the Russians flanking them. I see the Russians grinding them. I see the Ukrainians unable to defend their territory adequately, let alone expel the Russians. And I see basically the Ukraine graveyard is a monument to Zelensky's ego. He cannot adequately defend Ukraine. He cannot adequately get Ukrainians to defend Ukraine because they don't see it as defending Ukraine. They see it as defending him. This territory, they're not interested in. They don't want to defend it. They're forced to defend it. Not all. I would say 2/3 of Ukrainians are conscripts, according to the Ukrainian opposition party, saying that most of the, what would you call the patriotic army, is dead. Most of Zelensky's hardcore supporters are dead. He only has a handful of sycophants left around him. But see, he hasn't lost any named characters, which has emboldened him. All right? So as the European leaders stand behind him, he feels emboldened. Now he's asked for F-35s to be included in the security package. I think this is yet another move for him to stall talks while he builds up his weapons. He's working on a long-range tactical cruise missile. It's a pretty big missile, by the way. I think he's going to launch it at Moscow. I think he wants to inflict a lot of damage on Russia and then, do the old Zelensky dance where he runs around telling everybody that he's hurt the Russians and they must withdraw. They must withdraw. I'll continue hurting Russia. They won't withdraw. I'll bring the terror to them, he said. And that is what I think he's doing. I think he doesn't intend to end the war, and I think eventually Trump has to call him out. But it won't happen. There's just too much pressure from Europe. There's just too many people out there who won't listen to the truth and won't spread the truth and will not acknowledge the truth. I think too many Americans hate Russia to the point where they're willing to lie for Zelensky. Now, Europe is turning against their own masters. You see, UK is totally against the war now. Patriotism is rising across Europe. Challenges to the status quo, the liberal establishment, they're calling out the European leaders as hypocrites. Now, there's been a mass evacuation and parts of the DPR, according to the Russians, but this was what they got from a radio broadcast in Ukraine that national police had rounded up evacuated children in Dnipropetrovsk. No, I thought I saw that on the map before. There's fighting. Sorry. There's renewed fighting. I'm not sure where it is. I'm sorry, but there's renewed fighting and Russian advances here on the map. The map's updating. There's renewed fighting, increased fighting. But Kiev's refusal is what's halting the conflict. Kiev's refusal to acknowledge the realities is what's holding up the end to the conflict. Steve Gill has pointed out that the inability of the EU to meet Zelensky's demands, they just can't supply him with enough money. They don't have it. They don't have enough ammunition to match Russia's ammunition. And to meet Zelensky's demand for ammunition, Zelensky has expended tens of thousands of rounds on failed offensives. He's lost a lot of ammunition because of his inability to defend, because he defends political targets. He's so obsessed with defending Ukraine that he won't defend his supply lines. He's inadequate on manpower by 640,000 short. Every month since the beginning of the year, they've been around 30,000 short. It adds up very quickly, doesn't it? Plus you add, so not only are they short on manpower, don't forget, there's also the casualties, which doubles the shortage, right? You start with 300,000 short, but then you add the shortage of, up to the wounded and dead, and in the short force. And then, of course, then you add that to the AWOL, which brings it, again, the amount of casualties per day are mostly caused by drones dropping grenades on the Ukrainian lines. And the Russians are slowly and surely grinding. The conflict could continue for several more months, according to Gill, the Intergovernmental Affairs for the US Trade Representative for the Executive Office of the President. He's served multiple presidents. He's like the expert on war, okay? There aren't that many as expert when it comes to advising presidents on war. So if he's saying pull the pin, he means it. This is, pull the plug. This is dead, Stop trying to revive it. Again, there's been a massive protest and a massive backlash to Ukrainian recruiting methods. According to a Telegram post, which was repeated on RT, Ukrainian civilians fought off a mobilization drive, the so-called Territorial Centers for Recruitment and Social Support, increasingly brutal in their attacks on Ukrainian civilians. They've beaten, chased people down. They've been getting into altercations with bystanders who try to interfere. They're not supposed to take people by force. They're supposed to go to town to recruit people. But increasingly, to meet quotas, they're being increasingly violent. Many have reported forced conscription despite Zelensky's denials of forced conscription. It's one of those things where you've got to give credit where credit's due. I don't know if Zelensky gave the order to these people to forcibly conscript. But the clear part is, if you set quotas and these people can't meet quotas, and if you tell them if they can't meet quotas, you're on the next bus, that's a wink and a nod, right? That is by any means necessary, okay? That is setting up the conditions for corruption and forced conscription. Apparently pepper spray was used by the officers. Bystanders managed to still fight them off. But according to the Ukrainian opposition, at least 650,000 in the last 3 years have fled. This is the fighting age, let alone the millions of women who've left. Okay, Ukraine's lost a quarter of its population, according to the Ukrainian opposition. Now, this is a sitting MP who says that situation is dire where they've got 400,000 soldiers without leave. I would say this is the majority of what you would call the territorial units. This ain't front line. If this was 400,000 missing from the front line, you would see it. I would say this is the territorial units. These are the alleged guards that scattered throughout the country to stop the movement of Ukrainians. Okay, I think most of them, this is where most of them, right, border guards have gone missing, This is what I believe what they mean, right? Territorial guards, which is why you hear about the US having to deploy people to the border, Poland as well. But the German opposition has slammed EU's hypocrisy because first they didn't want to talk to Europe, then Europe didn't want to talk to Russia, then they ridiculed Trump's peace efforts. Now they're all singing his praises and getting behind him. At the same time, they can't, of course, admit, of course, it's an admission of their own failure. 3.5 years, blood on their hands, where the ADL, the Alternative for Deutschland, has been mocked, ridiculed, and called Russian agents for calling for peace, and now all of a sudden, it's Merkel 2.0 is saying, "I've been always supporting peace efforts." But the Wadel has said Trump has set it in motion. Responsible politicians should have undertaken this long ago, namely establishing communications with Russia and exploring the deals and possibilities for ending the war. But of course, Ukraine is not interested in peace. They keep adding conditions. They keep talking about security guarantees and and asking for more ammo, more money, more artillery, more jets. They want F-35s. They want missiles. They want to, of course, Russia to stop the attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure, but Russia's retaliating to attacks on their pipelines. Again, the Druzhba pipeline has been attacking, which is running gas and oil to Slovakia. Now, this pipeline had to be shut down earlier because of an attack, but another has been carried out. Pumping may have to stop again to assess the damage. Apparently, Russia has been able to repair it before, and Hungary is reconsidering its options because of attacks on its infrastructure. Trump really is in a pickle. Ukraine has carried out terrorist attacks, including on the Crimean Bridge. And, of course, Europe turns a blind eye and forces Trump to turn a blind eye. A lot of these things, Americans are turning a blind eye to so much. But 2 Ukrainian agents have been detained and have been put on, and they'll be put on trial along with all the other saboteurs. But these were recruited before the war. Ukraine, before the war, had put agents into Russia with explosives to carry out acts of sabotage. Ukraine planned this war. Ukraine set this war in motion. If you cannot accept that reality, that's you. Okay? You have to accept the facts, because you cannot unravel this war if you are not working with the facts. If you keep giving in to Zelensky's demands, well, if you keep giving him more money and more ammunition and more artillery, is that going to end the war? He's just got him buying drones from China and India. You can't say Russia has no right to buy drones from Iran. You got no right to interfere in this war beyond, a lot of Americans want this war to end, or at least the vast majority want to stop funding it. But Zelensky is, all these people who support Ukraine, go there. You'll soon regret it. Like, how many people so far? We haven't seen many hit the mainstream media, except for that guy in Britain who said he was there for 6 weeks and he saw rapes and murders routinely, and he says the police just stand around with their arms folded. Foreign mercenaries get mugged for their paybooks, often killed and tortured, and the British government turns a blind eye to all this because Russia. Now, of course, the intelligence officer who wrote the Russian dossier has been fired, apparently. But Russia's still considering its legal options. They may be unable to do anything, though, because of sanctions. But if you don't end this war, things will continue to get worse. That's the reality. And Trump will eventually bring this war to an end, but how many dead Ukrainians will it take? Well, it's only going to take one to end it, I think. One more dead Ukrainian and it's over. Handful. Take out Zelensky and his chums and it's over. Because most of the Ukraine's opposition want to end this war now. They want to cede the Donbass, recognising the reality on the ground that the people of Donbass don't want them. Don't want to be part of Ukraine. So thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and please support the channel. You can support me on Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, which you can find in the description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Once again, thank you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. YouTube overlords demand it. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.